once you come together, there has to be unity in where you're going to receive your spiritual feeding from.
That's right.
And then on another level, the man inside of the house, and I'm saying the man because the man is a covering for the house. He needs to make sure that there is an element of spiritual reality in the sense of a relationship to God as it relates to how the family operates. And so those are things that we want you to keep in mind, because we're going to see that when these three things are not in place,
Right.
what you'll find is that there's often division. And this is why we talk about the ongoing process of dating, because dating, and I'll give the definition in a moment, is discovering. Is discovering. I'm so thankful that we took the time during our dating process to discover certain things about one another. It would have been tragic for us to, and we talked about this before, about our home lives before we got married. The environment in our homes were so different.
And very different opposites.
They were opposites that it would have been tragic to get married and then find out
That it was opposite.
that it was opposite, because we would have spent the first year or so fighting on basic things. I mean, things that are common sense, but they would have been so fundamental to the livelihood and the well-being of a marriage that we would have had to struggle through those things just to save the marriage. It wasn't a situation, thank God it wasn't that situation, because beforehand, while we were going through the dating process, holidays came up. Where were we going for the holidays? When we had disagreements, how we were going to handle those disagreements. You know, was it going to be kept amongst us, or were we going to get family involved, or did the mother's in-laws or father in-laws or the in-laws themselves inject themselves into the relationship? We made those decisions before we got married, and that was a product of having the opportunity to discover who we were dealing with and how to resolve those issues that came up as a result of the differences. Those same type of things, because they haven't been resolved, graduate into the marriage. And that's why I think that the dating process of discovery has to become a regular part of our everyday life, being married. I want to know you at a deeper level. And as a matter of fact, I have dating is discovering, learning one another at an ever increasing and deepening levels. So would you say that you know me much better now than when we got married?
Definitely.
And I can say the exact same thing. And I can say that all of it wasn't necessarily a result of bad times. That there were some things that I learned during the good times, during the dating process, bad and good, but primarily during the good times, that helped me understand how to water my wife, in the sense that I learned in bad times, there are some things that I need to do to keep the marriage intact. But at the same time, sometimes marriages fall apart because things do go well. And then the focus falls off of the relationship and onto the business or the money or other opportunities. And
We should go through the reasons why marriages fail.
okay, so you don't want to talk about dating as living?
No.
Okay.
You can.
So let me go right to the point then. When we're talking about dating is discovering and at an ongoing level. Also, dating is living. When we're talking about dating is living, every day of your married life, you should be dating the person. You should be learning more about the person. You should be looking for opportunities to water them. You should be looking for opportunities for mutual growth. And so, with that said, my baby wants to get to these 5 major reasons why marriages fail. If you could go ahead and state the 5 major reasons.
Okay, number 1 is priorities change. Number 2 is problems and responsibilities arise, like finances, dealing with children, work, or health. Number 3, injuries, primary soulish ones that need to heal. Number 4, differing levels of maturity. Number 5, neglect, physical, mental, and spiritual.
See, now what just happened was that I know my wife well enough that my wife was communicating to me that what I'm talking about is actually in the 5 major reasons.
Yes.
No offense, I understand. That's why I have my wife. My wife is very intelligent. She recognizes, like, sometimes we'll be having a conversation and she'll just tap me, and that tap communicated a paragraph, because we've been together for over 30-something years. And I recognize that she's not being disrespectful. She is trying to save me from some problems, or I'm going down a path that could lead to things that I don't see. And generally she's a couple steps ahead of me, so I pay attention to those signals. so listen, look at what we just read, 5 reasons for why marriages fail. Priorities change. Just there, I recognize that that's the area that I was going in. You have, when people get successful, or just say jobs pop up, or even children are born, those are significant and real transitions that take place in our lives that we have to pay attention to.
Right.
That have to be, there are decisions that have to be made that need to be made right. And we understand that it takes your attention, that takes effort, that takes investment and resources and time and all those other things. However, the wife or the spouse or the husband cannot be put on the sidelines.
Right.
While you work those things out. Because what you will find is that you will stop dating that other person. And your effort and your energy and your time will be invested in developing your children, your career, and your finances.
Right.
I mean, we see that very
All the
often.
time, yes.
And so, and this is why you have to date. This is why you have to date, and you have to.
It keeps your spouse the priority.
It keeps your spouse the priority, and when all of those other things, when you retire or your children grow up and get out of the house, you left with your spouse.
Right.
And a lot of people, what happens is when those when those marks in life are met, children, you got an empty nest, or a person's finished at work, or they have to retire, or they retire voluntarily, something happens. Now you're home with your spouse, and if you invested all your time in there, those other things, oftentimes it's like you're at home with a stranger.
Exactly. Exactly. We've heard so many examples of people's marriages. They absolutely don't even know what to do because there's been no investment.
I have actually heard this on many occasions. I've worked with people that are well past retirement age, financially well off, and I asked them, why are you still working? They said, my wife wouldn't want me in the home. She has gotten accustomed to me not being there, and when we have snow days or I can't go into work and I'm at home and I have to work from home, it is so uncomfortable and so I'm out of tune because I don't want to disturb my wife, and my wife feels like she can't do what she usually would do because I'm home. And I'm just sitting there thinking, wow,
That's really sad.
Here you guys have been married all these years. You're finally at retirement age, and you're afraid to retire to spend time with the person that you have been married to all these years because y'all have such different priorities and focuses. I just smile. I don't even say anything back. I'm just like, wow. But you have to be careful because that can happen.
Yes, it can.
That can happen. If you don't water your relationship while you're going through these transitions and make your spouse a priority, once those transitions are complete, you will be sleeping next to a stranger if you're still sleeping in the same room.
Exactly.
I've heard that foolishness too.
Yeah.
That they have
Different rooms.
Yeah, that these spouses have different rooms. What?
I'm like, why are you married?
I mean, you know there's all types of openings for the enemy there. All right, so priorities change. Second, problems and responsibilities arise. We talked about the finances, children, work, or health. You cannot cause those problems or those responsibilities to take priority over your responsibility to your spouse. You got anything you want to add to that, baby?
No, that's
All right.
pretty good.
Injuries, primarily soulish ones that need to be healed. One of the reasons why marriages fail. So there are some things that can happen in a marriage that cause you to stop dating the other person or the person stop dating you because something has been said or done that has really wounded the person. And oftentimes, these things are said or done during a fit of anger.
Right.
Where you're not thinking right. But the thing about words specifically, they don't heal
Right.
like a physical wound. We talked about this before. We are definitely not talking about injuries from a physical altercation or being physically assaulted. That's criminal.
Right.
We're talking about the type of assaults that take place verbally.
Yes.
Or something is said or there's disrespect that is shown to a place where that person feels devalued, dehumanized, unnecessary. I can think of a lot of other words where the person has received a scar or wound in the very place that has compromised their personhood.
Right.
In that relationship. In that case, the process of dating should be done, as we talked about earlier, with wisdom. And this dating process is going to be a long, ongoing one.
Because there's healing that needs to take place.
And we understand that we're talking about dating during the marriage, so it's a long, ongoing one. But this has to be more intentional to heal that wound.
Yes.
That was inflicted. We're talking about in a healthy relationship, you just continue to do the things that brought the marriage together, being conscientious of the other person. But when the other person feels like they've been dismissed or there has been something that has happened that has caused themselves to devalue themselves in some form or fashion, you have to minister to that area. And it's going to take the wisdom of God, the grace of God, but you have to put in the work.
Yes.
Just like, when we were dating, my baby made me work. I mean, it wasn't the type of thing where, hey baby, my name is Joe, and she says, hey, my name is Jane, and then everything was married and we said, let's get married. It was one of those things where I had to, over an extended period of time, I'm talking years, pursue her to the place where she knew and recognized that my intentions were right and that I esteemed her valuable enough that I would set everything else aside to have the person I believe God had sent in my life as my wife. Now think about it. That took years to get to a place where she would say yes. Imagine I believe that words are powerful. So I'm not going to say in our relationship, But in a relationship where you put in all that type of work, and then in one moment, one word can destroy all of that.
Very true.
Now you're back to where you were at the beginning. This person has to know your motivations, has to get to trust you, has to, if there was something that happened outside of the marriage, has to develop their own personal self-esteem. And that should not be done by themselves.
Right.
They shouldn't have to figure and walk through those things by themselves. The person who inflicted it has to take on the role as a physician and begin the process of healing the person that they injured.
I was going to say the importance of words, how our first date, you said the words that I was going to be your wife. And I was like, this guy is crazy.
I sure did. I was a prophet and didn't even know it.
Yes.
Those were inspired words, because back then I would have never told anybody that I loved them. And that was one of the guys understands one of the player rules. You don't say that. But I knew, first I wasn't a player, but two, I knew that when I met her that she was different. It was just something that God had placed in my heart. But I sold those words initially because I meant it. And those are things I think that's the problem with negative words. When they are infused with what it is that you possess, like anger, or even even hatred. You get to a place where you say something hateful, it possesses the destructiveness of hate.
That's right.
And it's alive,
Yeah.
and that person receives it. That person feels hated.
That's right.
And now you're in a relationship with that person, and you're saying I'm sorry and everything, but that those words
are there,
are telling that person, this person doesn't mean it. This person actually hates me, or whatever they might be. If you say to someone, you're fat, or you're not in shape, or that takes on those words continue to work on someone, or you compare them to somebody else. You're not like so and so, or I'd have done better not marrying you. I've heard and seen a lot of different things where I'm like, how could you say that to your spouse?
Right.
But these things happen when people get angry, and when that takes place, those words are going to have to be uprooted.
That's right.
And if you have been taking any time where a tree has developed roots and become established, you're going to have to do a lot of uprooting.
Yes.
It's going to disturb everything, but those roots have to be taken up in order for you to have the type of garden or place where you could produce the type of harvest that you want. All right, injuries, primary soulish ones that need to heal. That's the third reason why marriages fail. So priorities change, problems and responsibilities arise, injuries take place, differing levels of maturation is the fourth reason. And we've seen this where it becomes obvious, and this is why dating beforehand is so important. It becomes obvious that one of the two partners in the marriage is more mature than the other one.
Right.
You have somebody who's mature enough that recognizes we're in a different season of life. We got to act like adults. We got to start planning on some things. We can't do things the way that we used to.
Right.
And then the other person is not there yet, and they are wondering why you cannot just have fun and go with the flow and just allow things to happen like we used to when we were dating. Well, we're not dating anymore. We're married now, and there are certain responsibilities around us now that a foundation needs to be laid in order for things to happen right. And sometimes one of the person is more mature and understands that, and the other person is not. And when that happens, there's going to have to be some watering taking place to get that other person to grow to where they need to be. And I find this primarily, not all the time, primarily with women are generally more mature when they get married than men. Take for instance, since I'm not going to point out anybody or anything other than what I've experienced myself. When we got married, that was one of the things that my wife communicated to me. It hurt, but it was true. I was spending all my time out playing basketball in these different gyms, traveling, doing these different things, and I was done playing college ball. Mm-hmm. And my wife told me one day, she said, I would like for you to stay home. Why are you always going out to the park or to the gym? And then you come home at night. It's like, because I like to. I like to play basketball. You knew this when we were married. I was an athlete. My wife was like, yeah, we're married now. And basically she was saying, and I would like to be married to you, not to the gyms or basketball or other things. And she said it in such a way and communicated in such a way where it wasn't confrontational. It was the truth. And I realized, one, what I'm doing right now, I'm not going to the NBA. I already decided I'm not going overseas. So this is just games that I'm playing. Mm-hmm. But I had a life that I had to build with her. I had a marriage that I had to build with her. Guess what I had to do? I had to put my childish things away.
Mm-hmm. It's very important for both spouses to recognize putting each other as a priority. One of the things, and I probably never even said this to you, one of the things that I was grateful that you did transition from that, because when I was by myself and I had to go and do activities and things that we should have been doing together by myself, it left an opening. There were people who were looking on and were like, where's your husband?
And my mind, in her comments to me, she was trying to protect the marriage. She was trying to protect herself as well as me. And so having that perspective, I understand how certain men could look at certain comments that their wives say. And if you're not ready to mature, you can take it in the wrong way. Mm-hmm. She's trying to keep me away from my friends. She's trying to separate me. She's trying to make me ask for permission to go do this and that. I had the worst marriage advice by somebody.
I don't even.
This person now. This is why you have to be mature,
Yes.
and you have to realize what you have, fellas. Because I was, we were married at the time. I believe we were married at the time. We had just gotten married, and this person was a pretty famous person in the town that we were in. And this person was married, and this person used to tell me, like, man, you got a really good woman. You got a really good woman. Don't do anything to mess it up. She's unlike a lot of these women out here. And I'm talking about this person is famous. And then one day we were sitting down talking, and he told me, he says, man, never allow your wife to get too comfortable to know where you're at every day every moment of the day. Sometimes just get up and leave, so that she gets used to you not being home, and you don't get to a place where you got to ask her permission to leave the house. Now that's some worldly wisdom. Mm-hmm. That was some ghetto worldly wisdom that will tear a marriage up. Because his marriage was,
I was about to say his marriage
was jacked. But in his mind, that was a rule that the fellas went by, so that they didn't feel like they had to submit to their wives in any form or fashion. That's immaturity. Mm-hmm. And I see that in a lot of men that view their wives to be more husbandly and to focus more on the home instead of things outside of the home as control. Mm-hmm. When a lot of times what she's trying to do is build a home, mm-hmm. with you at the head of it, not absent. And so we have to be careful with that different levels of maturity. And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to move on quickly too. I've seen it with women too. Mm-hmm. I've seen it where women don't mature to become wives, even to become mothers. They want to act like and pretend like they're still 20 years old,
Yes.
wearing stuff that they ain't got no business wearing. Grown women, and you watch them. One, it's a sign of neediness. You know, there's something that's not being watered
Yes.
at home. And two, her mind has not graduated beyond her value or worth being in people looking at her physically.
Right.
And so she sees value in getting men to look at her, even though she's married.
Married, yeah.
That causes her self-esteem. That's why we're saying you got to water her emotionally so that need is not there.
Right.
Whenever I see a married woman that is dressing provocatively, and even in the presence of her husband, I know he's not watering his garden properly.
Yeah.
That there's something wrong. She has a need that's not being met.
Yeah, that's right.
Or she's just immature. She is listening, and generally those women will be surrounded by other women that they're getting their advice from, single women. So they still act like and dress like they're single.
Right.
Or they're just getting bad advice from women in the family.
Right.
And so there has to be maturation to the place where you can separate yourself from those influences and stand in the position that you are in that relationship, a husband
And a wife.
and a wife.
That's right.